All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tearing down the macroeconomic illusions and facing the hard, on-the-ground realities of the upcoming 2026 World Cup. Look, if you're a financial allocator, a corporate strategist, or a municipal planner, the rosy narrative you've been sold, it might actually be hiding a massive operational trap. So we're going to break down exactly what the data is telling us right before kickoff.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to systematically break this down, moving from those dazzling global macro theories right down to practical, hyper-local corporate strategy. We'll hit the $80 billion illusion, the host city paradox, a major hospitality reality check, how to avoid the legacy trap, and finally, we'll wrap up with the ultimate ROI playbook. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The $80 billion illusion. Let's do a macro reality check. So let's look at those massive headline numbers that are just absolutely dominating the media right now. When you look at the projections for this expanded 48-team North American tournament, the figures are, well, they're staggering. Models are forecasting $80.1 billion in global gross output. That's injecting nearly $41 billion into the global GDP and supposedly creating upwards of 820,000 jobs worldwide. On paper, it looks like a guaranteed windfall for literally everyone involved. But as we know in finance, gross output is definitely not the whole story.
What's really fascinating here is how the governing body actually captures its wealth. FIFA is projected to shatter historical records with a $13 billion commercial revenue balance sheet for this cycle. And they do it through three highly guarded, heavily optimized commercial pillars. $4.3 billion from broadcasting, $3.47 billion from sponsorships and licensing, and $3 billion from ticketing and hospitality. The absolute crucial takeaway here: FIFA captures all this direct revenue with virtually zero localized operational risk.
Moving on to Section 2, the host city's financial paradox. Let's talk gross versus net profit. Because when we zoom in from those massive global projections down to local municipal budgets, a highly fragmented fiscal reality emerges. It's a perfect illustration of the core paradox in modern sports economics. Basically, gross economic activity simply does not equal net localized profit. FIFA holds the perfect revenue capture mechanisms, like those lucrative ticketing and broadcasting rights, while the host municipalities, they're left holding the massive logistical bills for policing, transit, and temporary infrastructure. You just can't rely on that rising tide lifts all boats assumption here.
Let's ground this in some hard numbers. Take Canada's budgetary allocation for its 13 matches. Across all government tiers, Canada is incurring an estimated $59.6 million in public expenditure per game. Now, while that is a huge fixed capital allocation, it actually shows some structural optimization when you compare it to the astronomical capital construction debts of past tournaments. I mean, Brazil spent over $90 million per game back in 2014, and Russia spent nearly $80 million in 2018, mostly because they were building brand new stadiums from scratch. North America, on the other hand, is utilizing existing infrastructure, and that changes the ROI equation entirely. Still, those localized security and operational costs, they are heavy. To combat these without completely draining standard municipal funds, regions like New Jersey are pioneering some really aggressive ring-fence taxation. They're proposing a 3% Meadowlands District sales tax, a 2.5% hotel occupancy tax, a 10% sports betting tax, and a $100 dedicated train transit fare. Basically, they're ensuring that the actual consumers of the event, not the general local taxpayers, foot the bill. Honestly, it's a pretty brilliant defensive financial strategy. All right, Section 3, the hospitality reality check, the surge and the valley. Let's see how this paradox is building into a totally unexpected crisis in the hospitality sector right now. If you thought every hotel was going to be sold out at record-breaking prices, well, think again. The American Hotel and Lodging Association is reporting a shocking reality check. 80% of surveyed hoteliers in host cities are currently seeing their bookings track significantly below their initial, super enthusiastic forecasts. That expected booking frenzy? It's basically decelerated into a highly cautious crawl. The crucial thing to understand here is an economic phenomenon known as the crowding out effect. See, regular corporate conventions and traditional summer vacationers are actively avoiding these 16 host cities because they're anticipating logistical chaos and hyperinflated prices. This means the tournament is largely displacing traditional summer baseline tourism rather than stacking purely on top of it. A lot of hotels have actually driven away their reliable baseline business, but they aren't getting nearly enough international fans to replace them. And exacerbating this massive hospitality shortfall is the sheer extreme cost of attendance. Get this, a Category 1 ticket for the 2026 final at MetLife Stadium opened at an unprecedented $10,990. Compare that to $1,607 in Qatar, or roughly $3,300 for the 1994 final in the US, adjusted for inflation. This aggressive dynamic pricing, combined with complex geopolitical visa frictions and soaring flight costs, has effectively priced out a huge chunk of international tourists. The result? A massive shift toward domestic attendees and regional day trippers, who simply drive in, watch the game, and head home without ever booking a hotel room.
All of this is culminating in a massive market correction. Because of that suppressed demand and early pricing algorithms jacking up rooms to $1,000 a night, approximately 70% of FIFA's official group hotel blocks have been abruptly released back into the open market. Vancouver alone just saw 15,000 drop nights. The sudden flood of returning inventory has caused those early algorithmic room rates to absolutely plummet, dropping by up to 40% in some markets as hotels scrambled just to hit basic occupancy levels. Which brings us to Section 4, avoiding the legacy trap. Let's look at infrastructure and long-term impact.
So with those initial assumptions completely shattered, how are successful cities avoiding historical legacy traps? Well, rather than building temporary white elephant stadiums that drain civic capital for decades, the winning regions are leveraging pre-existing mega assets and strictly funneling their public money into permanent, decades-long upgrades. Los Angeles is a prime example here, totally avoiding construction debt by utilizing the pre-existing $5 billion SoFi Stadium. Meanwhile, down in Atlanta, they aren't spending on temporary patches, they're deploying their capital into a massive overhaul of the MARTA regional transit system, creating a legacy that's going to serve residents for generations. In Seattle, they're standing out by pioneering inclusive labor union partnerships to make sure local workers actually capture some of that economic upside.
And we definitely can't overlook the massive strategic advantage of Mexico's unique co-host position. While the U.S. deals with a broader inbound tourism slump, this tournament acts as a powerful, unmitigated demand shock for Mexico. We are seeing a huge surge in Mexican aviation traffic forecasts. OMA Airport Group is forecasted to grow by 7.3%, with domestic carriers like Volaris and Viva Aerobus following right behind. And this influx is also rapidly accelerating commercial real estate development in districts around Monterrey.
Finally, Section 5, the ultimate ROI playbook. Time for some actionable strategy.
Let's distill all this complex data into a highly actionable strategy. First up, let's talk about the digital asset space, specifically sports crypto and fan tokens. The golden rule here for de-risking your portfolio is buy the rumor, sell the news. If you look at the historical precedent from Qatar in 2022, peak valuations for these sentiment-driven assets materialized right before kickoff. So if you hold crypto fan tokens, the mathematically viable strategy dictates executing your exit before that opening whistle, because speculative valuations almost always collapse once actual tournament play begins. Next, for corporate treasury departments and marketers looking to extract real value, you absolutely must avoid the capital expense trap. Do not lock yourself into rigid multi-year property leases tied to the stadium footprint. Instead, you need to deploy highly agile, decentralized operational expenditures. We're talking short-term experiential pop-ups and localized social media ad buys utilizing independent creators. Global ad spend around the tournament is decentralizing away from traditional linear TV, and you need to be exactly where that fragmented attention is. So here is your 4-step immediate execution playbook. 1. Pivot your marketing decisively toward domestic drive markets because they are the ones actually buying the tickets. 2. Aggressively exploit that secondary wave of hotel availability. Corporate CFOs can negotiate massive late-stage discounts on premium hospitality blocks right now because hotels are literally desperate to fill that dropped inventory. 3. Invest in peripheral fan zone retail to capture day tripper spending outside the immediate stadium perimeter. And 4. Audit mispriced long-term real estate equity surrounding those newly optimized regional transit hubs we talked about in cities like Atlanta.
As we head into kickoff, I want you to ask yourself a serious question. Is your business, your portfolio, or your municipality truly executing an agile, risk-mitigated net profit strategy? Or are you falling victim to the macroeconomic illusion, destined to be left holding the operational bill? The wealth is absolutely there to be captured, folks, but only if you play the reality of the game, not the myth.